of DoubleLift and Biofrost.
Well, let's see if TSM can find their second series win with this couple of games here against Dignitas, or if Dignitas will go up to 3-0 and take down the Titans in North America. LeBlanc and Thresh banned away first and foremost by Dig. Zach, the first ban from TSM. Zach, a very, very popular ban these days. Not a lot of people willing to play against that.
Yeah, not a lot at all. Some people do want to play against it, and they'll play like Janna, like we just saw in Europe with G2, when they were able to kind of pick around it, but still a very risky pick to just give up first pick to your opponents, especially when they're running a substitute jungler like Shrimp, who hasn't played on the LCS stage in a few months now. I would say it's about over 6, maybe 7, 8 months now. He did play in Japan. He played 5 games for Detonation Focus Me, went 4-1, and then got subbed out back in February.
Syndra, the third ban now for Dignitas. Galio, the second for TSM. A couple of mid laners being targeted by Dig, really respecting Bjergsen and his traditional style of being the carry for TSM. We mentioned a little bit about fans' distaste with him playing something that's not a carry. Well, Dignitas would love to see him on not a carry, because the carries are what they want out of the picture. Elise will be the final ban from TSM as well, focusing even more towards that jungle.
Exactly. Actually throwing respect bans towards Shrimp, not disrespecting the fact that he's subbing in. But yeah, like you said, with them really wanting to have, or TSM fans really wanting Bjergsen on a carry, they ban out their own Galio, so I guess they're giving some fan service there, making sure they don't even play it.
Don't worry, we will not lock this in. We're making it impossible for ourselves, as the first lock-in is going to be Lee Sin over to Dignitas, the evergreen jungler, the one who seems to always have some kind of a presence, a lot in the kit, a lot of playmaking opportunity here.
Yeah, a lot of ability to just go off and set up his laners in the early game. Will be very interesting to track Shrimp, because this is a guy who made his career playing Rek'Sai, his most played champion by far, followed by things like Kindred as well. He has been playing the new Kindred in solo queue, so it's a possibility that as this series goes on, you may see more of those two champions, but don't think we're going to see him at all in this one.
Yeah, you do have to remember, recently remade / reworked champions, a lot of times you're not going to see those debut too rapidly just because players want to get used to them. Rek'Sai also doesn't have the best reputation right now, being a bit underwhelming compared to what most players were expecting. But TSM, they're going to go ahead, lock in themselves some ranged powerhouses with Kennen and Caitlyn first picks.
Have the Caitlyn for the bottom lane immediately. The Kennen is really interesting, but this means they aren't going to play it in the bottom lane, but they'll be playing it top. Hauntzer, 2-0 on Kennen. He's only won games this split on Kennen. The other two, Rumble Fiora, have lost on those two carries, so they were looking for bully power when they're up against Ssumday in the top lane, but the Jayce is most likely going there as a counter.
Jayce versus Kennen in that top side. Varus going to be the pick from Dignitas to also deal with Caitlyn. It's going to be Lod piloting that one up against DoubleLift, who looks like he might have some extra supporting power if this pick goes through. TSM thinking about that Ivern. A couple more seconds before they actually have to make the decision. It looks like that will be locked in.
Yeah, huge power here with the Ivern. You pair that up with Caitlyn, the headshots actually just stack up way faster. You can put traps in the Brushmaker so people can't even face check those if they wanted to. And this becomes a composition where you're looking at it going, okay, maybe they could run a Lucian mid, but then that would be a completely AD composition.
Right.
They'll most likely round it out with something along the lines of a Cassiopeia, something that has a lot of sustained damage to make sure that they benefit from the shields and have some AP.
And talking about the Brushmakers, talking about the traps from the Caitlyn, the siege and anti-siege capabilities of both of these champions are very strong, and when you put them together, it can just be this insurmountable task to have to get past unless you are seriously coordinated and know how to do a teamfight trigger pull to instantly go after them. It's going to be a tall order for Dignitas to be able to execute on that if TSM gets ahead. Zyra banned away first in the second part of the bans for TSM. Dignitas responding by taking Ori off the table.
Yeah, Orianna, Taliyah, Syndra, the top three right now. Now 2 of them have been removed. So the possibility of a Taliyah also on the table as a ban, but they're banning away some champions from Big here. Won't have 2 playmakers available to him because the Thresh and Zyra banned away. But it's really support and mid that are left for both of these teams to pick up there. And the Kassadin ban towards Keane. If you go back, this matchup between Keane and Bjergsen is kind of like a lane semi-rivalry where you think about the original Zed counter pick, Urgot, came out from Keane. He played the Jarvan into the Ezreal. These are like really old school picks that Keane was able to play against Bjergsen, and that's when he debuted them. So Keane always seemed to have something up his sleeve for Bjergsen.
We'll see what he can do this time around. You said it already, Zirene, support and mid. The 2 roles left to pick. If TSM has any idea of what they really want in terms of a mid laner, they'll pick it up right now. There's that last remaining S tier pick you mentioned, the Taliyah being hovered. They could also save mid for their final pick if they wanted a counter pick, but the Taliyah is too valuable. They lock that in.
Yeah, Taliyah on the table, so they take it away. No Syndra, nothing of those likes. I assume they go for maybe a Cassiopeia here is what you would expect into the Taliyah.
And it explains the Caston ban as well, keeping Caston away from being able to play into that Taliyah.
Yeah, but now they get to last pick their support, have a favorable support matchup in whatever they think that is going to help them out against this team composition. And this may be something we see a little bit more often.
Prophet Zirene getting the Cassiopeia prediction in there, making sure that
it's going through my tier list.
What's going to happen? Yeah, exactly. You just go down the list, right? Everything else is banned away. Cassiopeia, something that we frequently see picked up in the mid lane. So much damage capability. You mentioned the sustained damage, not just burst. Very, very deadly to deal with.
Yeah, it's also a good Keane champion as well. Loves doing the damage, and now they're going to have mixed damage on both teams.
Bard is also the final lock-in on the side of Dignitas. I'm so happy, Zirene, to see the supports. Oh my.
No, don't talk about the hover. You'll jinx it.
Is that okay? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, yeah, let's talk about Bard. Man, I like Bard. Bard is cool. Bard does stuff.
Great champion.
And Bard makes all kinds of moves, and he binds people into the wall, and it's awesome. Aww.
This is why we don't talk about the hovers. We get debated. But still, the Bard.
We tried. The Bard. Yeah, I love watching playmaking supports like this. My point was actually going to be, I have so much more fun watching a Bard or a Thresh than a Karma. And then we get Carmen. That's Karma.
Well, they just want to push the lane in and make plays. But I like the Bard pick here because if you think about the compositions against each other, Dignitas had really no solid way to engage aside from a Lee Sin kickback, which becomes unreliable. And then you also have the Varus ultimate, which then means Varus at least has to be in range for that. Right. Whereas the Bard can just alley-oop, just throw it, go for the Hail Mary, and try to get himself that play. And that's really what you want when you're against this composition that has no tank for TSM.
And when a Bard play works, it really does work. And it looks really cool to see him be able to land the Tempered Fate exactly where he needs it, get the binding right as someone comes out of the Tempered Fate to lock two people together or lock someone into a wall. A lot of potential there with that champion, but you can also, if you miss the things, have some pretty hilarious or sad, depending on what point of view you're looking at it through results. But TSM, you mentioned, they don't really have a tank. They do have a lot of shielding capability. They've got kiting, they've got distance. But if they get jumped on by Dig, if they can find that initiation you were talking about, that's their win.
Yep, shielding and kiting, and that's going to be how they kind of make up for not having a tank. But both teams really don't have a true tank. But the thing that Dignitas has over TSM is they have engage power. They have the ability to start those fights, and TSM will most likely be playing from a position of will siege and try to avoid the engage, which becomes very difficult to do if your opponents are on point.
Listen to the crowd, Zirene. Dignitas cheers, TSM cheers. These guys are ready for the series, and so am I. They're off from the summoning platform onto Summoner's Rift for the first time today. Ready to make their mark here in week 2 of the NA LCS. Still plenty of time and plenty of games to go till we reach the end of this one. Everyone wants to make a name for themselves and be a strong contender.
Yeah, and I want to watch Shrimp very heavily this game because Chaser and Ssumday had their synergy down, and we saw Chaser have a little bit more presence across other lanes as well. What does Shrimp bring to the table here? Why is he playing? And we're going to find out eventually exactly why they're running Shrimp, or at least get more context on that as the day goes on.
One thing I want to specifically look at in terms of where he goes and who he helps. Remember when we were looking at stats for Ssumday from Spring Split? When Ssumday got kills in lane, when Ssumday made plays early on, it was always Chaser helping him. Almost some absurd number, 85, 90% of the time. Is Shrimp going to make that same investment in Ssumday? Because we talked about his carry potential, his ability to win the game, and if he needs help doing that, you've got to lend the help.
Exactly, and we talked last split near the end about how Dignitas looked best when they were playing reactive and when they were playing with freeing up Ssumday to help everybody else. This split, they've looked best when they're engaging, when Big is making a play, and when Ssumday is freed up and is just crushing the lane. He's not helping other people, he's just Lucian 1v3 topping and those types of plays. That's when they've looked best so far this split.
And right now, we've actually got a little bit of an interview with Freak, who got to talk to Cop about what Dignitas is up to today.
Thank you very much, Flowers. Yeah, so I talked to him about the roster changes, both Big coming in support as well as Shrimp in the jungle, and he said both these were for communication reasons, to have the team be more vocal and work together a bit better. Also asked him about Ssumday playing more carry top laners and said, were you excited about that? And he's like, well, maybe, but there's also more counter picks, so there's some pro and some con there. Back to you guys.
Shrimp actually looking for an invade here or possibly a play bottom. They started on the red. He's going to look for DoubleLift here before they hit level 2. Big walking up, going for the play.
Level 2 gank from Shrimp. DoubleLift going to be stunned up. The damage coming through, and first blood for Shrimp. Dignitas gets on the board.
Man, that Shrimp ain't even on the Barbie. He's going
2 minutes in, and they are already finding first blood. This is an aggressive Team Dignitas.
And that means that also he's not going to get punished. He's not going to lose his blue just yet. Ivern can usually just smite steal that thing away, but Ivern and Svenskeren started on the top side. They knew that because they saw him there when Ssumday was kind of poking around. So Shrimp won't lose his blue for that play either. Ends up being real good.
Exactly what they needed. One more look at it here.
And like DoubleLift is actually the top side of the lane, which is right. Have your support on the bottom side for brush control, but he doesn't see Shrimp sneak in because Shrimp takes the perfect route and big ignite. Throws down the Q. It does connect for a stun, which makes the easiest Sonic Wave resonating strike of your career.
Yeah, there's no way you're going to miss out on that one, but look at the fan vote, 81%.
Yeah.
Rocking those TSM chants saying that they're walking away with the win from this one.
Yeah, everybody saw what happened with the 90-10.
That's right, 90-10,
so.
Immortals versus Envy, and who walked away with the 2-0? It wasn't the team with a 90% fan vote, so can't always trust those numbers to tell you the outcome of the game. Can tell you who's got the most fans, though, and TSM, you gotta say, they have a fan base for real.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what you're picking that bottom lane for, that poke there, but you can see Lod still has 2 potions, just popped 1, and he has the Doran shield, so he'll be back up to full in no time. It's one of the reasons that we're seeing more of these playmaking supports is having somebody like a Karma poke you out of lane. It's way harder to actually poke somebody and get them out of the lane completely.
Top side between Ssumday and Hauntzer, just going to continue to trade basic blows back and forth. Dorian's shield's up there as well. If auto attacks are the name of the game, get the thing that reduces the damage, gives you the regen, and just keeps you up there, makes it so you will scale into those later parts of the game, do that damage.
Yeah, and the interesting part about this as well is like a lot of people are taking Fearless, the mastery that gives you more armor. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner how it's ticking down for Lod. It's the green one. It just gives you more armor, more resists, and AD carriers are running it now. Top laners are running it now constantly. It's in the same tree as, reduced summoner spell cooldown in that same part, so people have kind of given that up for more resistances and trades. So everybody's kind of moving towards lane phase, lane phase. That's where we really need to just stay and not lose. And that's how everybody's kind of playing right now, is to not lose that lane phase, because it's so hard to actually win it.
Right. It's one of those things where you don't have to worry. You're not going to have to worry about the late game if you lose 20 minutes into the match anyway.
Yeah. So everybody's just kind of playing like that right now. Even top lane, like we saw the Doran shield, they both have 2 potions still. They haven't even dipped into their potion supply in the slightest.
Right. Everything's pretty fine for them down here. Not too big of a worry just yet. This game still very close in terms of gold. That first blood for Dignitas that had assists on it.
Svenskeren's invading right now. Warded over the wall. Shrimp is going back down bottom. He bought a Tiamat for himself. Interesting buy on Lee Sin. You normally don't see that at all. He usually go straight for the Warrior.
Yeah, the Tracker's Knife into the Warrior. You get the Ward Hop potential. Warrior is also a very cost-effective item in terms of the enchantment power. So wants to get that AoE clear ability, though. Also adds a little bit of extra damage into his burst rotation with the active.
Oh, Shrimp hanging around.
Svenskeren walking down here. Shrimp will see him if he comes through.
So what Shrimp saw was he saw the bush pop up in the bush.
He saw the bush in the bush.
It was exhibit style.
Yeah. Svenskeren will go back into his own jungle, unsatisfied with the result of that invade. Wasn't really getting a whole lot done there, but level 4 on this Ivern. Still yet to make an appearance into the lanes, have really any impact on the game. Being out-farmed for the time being by Shrimp, but jungle CS is very finicky. You never really know what it means, considering some camps have 6 creeps in them, some have 10, some have 1.
Yeah, Ivern even gets just 2 for doing the Krugs as opposed to the normal 10, I believe is what it is.
Yeah, 10 for any other champion in the game, 2 for Ivern. Keane continuing to pressure mid lane here as well. Very, very close CS between these two. You talked about how Keane's been the guy in the past.
Oh, looking for a play on DoubleLift again. Trying to push him. There it is!
The flash won't do it anyway, and Shrimp take 2. Bottom lane.
Big Shrimp right now. Oxymoron coming through in the bottom lane. I am loving this.
That's what you do. You find an opportunity, you find a weakness, and you hit it again, and again. Dignitas knows what they're doing here in the bottom lane. 1,000 gold lead now off the back of those 2 kills.
And I talked about it that the bottom lane's still looking a little rusty, and TSM fans are really waiting for that big firepower to come back. But right there, big with communication, Shrimp, Dignitas. This is what they were playing for, and they look like a very different team in the early game. Weren't as proactive before. Now, they are making plays, but look at this, TSM making their own.
Keane forced to flash away, trying to keep himself
Big's
safe.
here, though.
Be careful about that one. There they go. 1 kill already. Over to Bjergsen. Can they find retaliation? Dignitas now being forced to flash over the wall, and TSM find their fight.
Yeah, that ends up being a kill going over, and it does go over to Bjergsen, so good for them there, and they get both summoners away from both mid laners.
Yeah, good pickup for TSM there, getting themselves on the board, putting the money on Bjergsen of all people as well. Couldn't really have had that go better considering the other 2 options were the supports on the team. Ivern not really a typical jungler, much more akin to the support role, but here we go.
Yeah, Keane was trying to go after Biofrost here, who was clearing out a ward, and that's just kind of a play where you give it up. I feel like he felt as though Shrimp and Big were closer, and then he got root collared from Fog of War, so it was great from Svenskeren to help them close that distance. And then they get the kill onto Bjergsen, who now gets to have that advantage in lane. He was even with Keane up until that point, but now Keane's been denied a wave, CS, as well as that kill.
Yeah, the Karma, I mean, the Karma's just sitting there clearing the ward right in your face. You gotta think something's up. I feel like Keane got a little bit jebaited there, going too far in on trying to pick that support up, but he's still doing all right for himself. Slightly further behind in farm now, but he does have the tier, getting that stacked up as fast as possible.
Then my favorite part of Ivern games is the free blue buff to the mid laner, but the top lane. Hauntzer on this AD Kennen just got handed off a red buff himself, so advantage for him in the top lane. Even though he doesn't have the Bilgewater Cutlass like Ssumday does, he has the Cull, so he's going for the fast scaling. And like I was saying, Hauntzer currently 2-0 on this champion.
Hauntzer liking to play a lot of those carry-style champions in the top lane.
Yeah.
Split pushers, the fighters. You mentioned it already. 4 games, 2 games of Kennen, 1 of Rumble, 1 of Fiora.
Yep.
There's no tanks in there.
Yeah, Ssumday, 5 games, 3 carries, 2 Shen games.
Whoa.
Still higher damage per minute, though.
Bard does so much damage.
Trading back and forth. Bjergsen's coming down, though, and they're trying to get Big.
Chasing the hole blocked up. Law doing a good job protecting
Bjergsen
Big.
is looking.
Nope, he's not going to ride the wall.
Nope, no Weaver's Wall to run through. What's Shrimp doing? Shrimp hanging out in the pit. Just looking for camps to do.
He's counter-jungling the Ivern, taking away any resources he can. Not really seeing an opportunity to make a counter gank anywhere until he spots Hauntzer, who goes ahead, pops the lightning rush, trying to get himself out. Shrimp making the play. There's your kick. Sonic Wave, resonating strike, likely going to be coming through. Doesn't even need it. Gets himself out. And that's the 3rd kill for Team Dignitas as part of Shrimp's agenda as TSM gets turret first blood across the map.
Svenskeren was down bottom for so long. Hauntzer overstayed top lane based on where his jungler was. When your jungler's making a play bot, you have to pull back top. And they saw Svenskeren, so really sticking around for Hauntzer was the bad play. He needs to play it safe there in that situation.
Meanwhile, bottom side, TSM deciding the only thing better than 1 objective is 2. They'll go ahead and pick up the first Mountain Drake for themselves as well. Get that extra future objective control under their belt with the bonus from that Drake. And even though they are behind in kills, thanks to that turret first blood, the gold's dead even, Zirene.
Exactly, and that's kind of the big point here. It's the macro play and what comes down to that. We can see the skirmishes going the way of Dignitas, but where Shrimp was on the map at that time was completely opposite of Svenskeren. So TSM get way more because Shrimp can't come down to bottom and help out there, and they do have a shoving lane. When you pick the Caitlyn Karma, you get that chip damage on the turret all throughout the lane phase, bring your jungler down, and you get to finally take it. But Shrimp, at the time that they're trying to take it, not anywhere in the vicinity, so it gives up for free.
And with the turret first blood down, that means more rotations are going to be coming into the picture. Remember, Rift Herald is still alive, and that's a rather attractive objective to go for these days. We're not in the olden times of Rift Herald just sort of being a meme that you go for 6,000 gold ahead at 10 minutes. So.
I mean, MSI, people were taking it pretty seriously. It was one of those things where it's changed, and
I'm still convinced half of them forgot that they weren't playing on the good Rift Herald patch at MSI. But Shrimp now starting this one up by himself. It's also really easy to solo it now.
Yeah, you can solo it, just walk right behind it, hit it in the eyeball, and then it'll open up a few seconds later. But yeah, Shrimp, I actually think Shrimp has been going off this game. His early level 2 play was right. Svenskeren couldn't actually counter with anything on the other side of the map. And then he got multiple return kills. And then really just this Rift Herald and the positioning of on the map. Only kind of fluff that he's had so far is just that one just happened with positioning on the map.
Took him a little while, but nobody ever noticed, so he got that Rift Herald for his team now. The question is, what can they get out of it? Rift Herald's not one of those things where you pick it up like a Drake, you get the bonus for the rest of the game. You need to deploy it in the right time at the right place to really make an impact.
Yeah, right now the map is kind of lopsided for TSM. Hauntzer needs to run down bottom. He'll have some turret damage onto his turret. He doesn't have teleport, and Ssumday does. So Ssumday has TP. You have Rift Herald. You have to watch out on your top side of the map because there's a possibility for this unanswered TP to come through after Ssumday backs.
Lod continuing to push up. DoubleLift going to keep on defending. Blade of the Ruined King is going to be very close to coming online very soon for multiple players.
We talked about communication for Dignitas, talked about their TP plays being set up, and you can see here, Wards behind the turret looking for something as they shove this wave in.
Dignitas wants to keep the pressure on. They still have a very slight gold lead, even though they're down on objectives. They're about to change that with Rift Herald being summoned, and they'll ram her face right into that turret. I finally remember that Rift Herald is in fact a girl. Ivern walking away. Oh, wait, down! Tempered Fate will force the flash away from Svenskeren. The Weaver's Wall comes out too, just to cut off any sort of a chase.
That
Yeah.
Tempered Fate looked pretty troll. It looked like it was going to hit Ssumday as he came out. Ssumday is like having none of that, so he just cancels it. And now he's just going to hang out on this bottom side of the map, waiting for the bottom wave to shove into him. But they do answer the top turret with the Rift Herald, so they get something out of it, and they start getting some map pressure back. But they do sacrifice their teleport.
Bard is one of those champions that can be the flashiest, most impressive, or the most troll champ in the game, depending on who's playing him and what they're doing that game. And the troll plays are some of the funnest ones to see, but right now Dignitas looking to see more of those flashy plays instead. That turret take gets them a slightly larger gold lead, but man, it's still such a neck-and-neck game between these two. Next Drake's going to be Infernal as well, so expect some blood over that one.
Yeah, that's what I'm really looking forward to, is that Infernal Drake. As soon as that comes up, what's the position of everybody in terms of their items? You can see just now Keane picking up Banshee's Veil, making sure he doesn't get blown back or caught by another Q from Svenskeren. Banshee's Veil also got buffed on 7-11. Well, changed, actually. It went up in price, so you can't get it as early. But the magic resist went up by 15. So
it stayed the same cost efficiency, or very roughly the same.
The whole idea was so that you spend a little bit more money on this defensive item before you start going for your offensive items. So if he's looking for that defensive power to scale as Cassiopeia, it could be a pretty good buy. Only question is, how easy is it to really get this Banshee's Veil off of the Cassiopeia when you have a Karma and a Taliyah that throws out threaded volleys? You'll block one portion of it, but not a lot.
Exactly. There's plenty of things you can pop it with. Those Blade of the Ruined Kings I mentioned earlier, also now online for both Ssumday and Lodge. Meanwhile, Redemption up and running for Svenskeren, so that extra team fight power will be there for these guys here in 90 seconds when Infernal Drake finally pops. Dignitas with plenty of bodies around the mid lane, looking to put pressure here onto the mid lane turret.
They know Svenskeren doesn't have flash as well. Tempered Fate coming up in a few seconds here. About 5 more on it before Big has it. And that could be the big ticket that they're looking for here. Setting up around Infernal Drake. Maybe looking for Kennen as they push down bottom side. And they're going to try to just flex here. This is a play where you flex your power on the map. You had a shoving bottom wave. Hauntzer has to back. His teleport's coming up momentarily. And now you get to deal damage to this turret.
Oh, Sonic Wave missed, but Chains of Corruption are there. Piercing Arrow too. Biofrost walks away from that one thanks to the miss on the Lee Sin Q.
But the TP from behind.
Wave is here. They're looking to collapse. TSM want to punish for this if they can. Tempered Fate's going to be locking up Hauntzer. Bjergsen trying to come in from behind now. Daisy on the front lines. Dignitas properly retreat from this one. Daisy's going to be burned away. Hauntzer gets stopped before he can go into the fight. That was a very important Tempered Fate. He had both flash and ult.
Very important that Big landed both his Q and his Tempered Fate, because his Q on Svenskeren stopped that root caller from being 1 step or 2 more forward, and also the fact that that Tempered Fate hit Hauntzer right on point.
Good disengage from Dignitas, almost putting themselves in a tricky spot there, but instead walking away with it. Now shoving yet another minion wave into the turret, and that means that they will secure this one. One more auto attack from Lod will do the trick. Take these guys up to nearly 2,000 gold ahead as Infernal spawns.
And Dig will get this Infernal based off map positioning. Hauntzer blew his TP there and got nothing for it because of Big, and that means he has to go clear top wave, and it puts him in a position where unanswerable TP from Ssumday, 100% Dragon for Dignitas. Big has been playing the micro perfectly, and that's what's leading to some macro advantages because TSM doesn't get anything off of their play.
Dignitas definitely coming out better on top in that one, being the team who recognizes the opportunity to have the macro edge. But now, have to see what they can do with that. 65% Drake control. 3rd overall in the NA LCS so far for Dignitas summer split. But TSM will respond, taking down the top lane tier 1, saying you can play the objective game, well we can play it too, tying up that turret count 2-2, bringing the gold again back under 1,000. The next one of these big fights that we see, Zirene, the next big 5-on-5 fight that goes convincingly one way is going to determine a lot about the tempo and the pacing of this game.
Yeah, and this is such an interesting game from a champion select standpoint as well, because TSM, they're okay to scale, right? They're okay to have their double AD composition plus their mage and double shields and kind of play the tankless comp, but their engage isn't that great. They really rely on Bjergsen to kind of wall people off and look for those rotational plays. So it takes a lot of setup for TSM to really find something, whereas Dignitas can counter that with a Tempered Fate or make their own engages happen. Look at this right here.
Ssumday forced to flash out. The root caller was going to be right on point. Ssumday was not looking to mess with that.
Yeah, and like I was saying, going back to the compositions for a second, is that Dignitas are actually very happy to scale with their Cassiopeia in the mid lane. They're okay for these late game fights, but they can actually have those mid game fights. So it's kind of like when you have somebody on your team who's like, let's fight now, and your mid laner's like, whoa, bro, I'm like level 5 Kassadin. Like, I don't do anything just
No, that's
yet.
not going to work.
But you're like, I'm Bard, I can engage, I can really make this happen. So they're trying to look for skirmishes early on Dignitas' side, not those big 5v5 team fights yet.
Meanwhile, TSM utilizing that siege power we were talking about with the Caitlyn and the Ivern, setting up rushes. You can set up traps if they try to defend it. Dignitas will steal away the red buff, but if you trade a red buff for your bottom lane tier 2, that's not a very wise trade.
Yeah, but what they're trading for this, though, is the potential to get both mid and top tier 2 here. Mid turret's going to take some damage. Won't actually go down here because they didn't actually put all the resources into it. Top turret is where the focus is now as Hauntzer's backed off, which is right. You saw what happened to him earlier when they were making a bottom lane play and he got ganked top. Avoiding that this time and playing around it.
Now a tier 2 and a red for a tier 2. That's a much better sounding trade for Team Dignitas. 3 turrets down now on both sides. TSM and Dignitas both breaking that tier 2 line before 20 minutes. As Shrimp looks for a play here on mid lane, potentially. He's got the ability to jump behind, but he's got to be careful.
So what he's really looking for here is potentially Bjergsen, because during that tier 2 take, Big ultied and got Bjergsen's flash. So Bjergsen no longer has that summoner spell to reposition himself from a flash kick.
Bjergsen will have to be very aware of that for the next 5 minutes or so as he has to keep eyes on Shrimp, make sure he doesn't get himself kicked. Taliyah's got no way out if she gets kicked into the fight. She's just going to be stuck there and bursted down.
Yeah, that's where you get the turtle shell. Just really hope that those shields are coming through.
Yeah, you got to hope that the Ivern and the Karma and everybody is just there to heal you. Caitlyn's got the heal up and running as well, but if there's enough damage from Dignitas, it's not going to matter anyway. Miasma and much poison coming out from the Twin Fangs.
Much poison.
Much poison. Mini poison.
Such fang.
So dot.
Wow. Anyway, the mid lane push here, they're looking for this mid turret and what they could possibly pick up. Both teams will be playing around mid now. It's ARAM time in the NA LCS. It's a classic.
And you know, one thing we were looking at coming into this series specifically, Zirene, we talked about Ssumday. We talked about him going up against Hauntzer, how Hauntzer didn't have the carry potential they wanted him to have when Bjergsen was playing the Galio, how Ssumday had some great games in week number 1, and so far, neither one of the 2 top laners has had a huge impact on this game. You saw Big deny Hauntzer being able to make the flanks he wanted with the TPs, and Ssumday hasn't really been that crazy, I'm going to solo kill people multiple times, play my top lane Lucian or my Fiora that we saw in week number 1. So right now, I'm still waiting to see that pop-off from one of these 2.
Yeah, I mean, the Jayce is a champion up against the Kennen where you'll win the matchup slightly. The Doran shield makes that pretty null, and then you get to the point where I'm poking against a team that doesn't have a tank, so he's in good shape for late game. But that's really what they're waiting for, is that type of moment. But really, it's Shrimp this game. Right. When you look at the way that the gold is distributed, both solo laners for TSM are up about 300. Shrimp is up 1,000 over Svenskeren. Granted, Ivern's items are a little cheaper and easy to buy, and he doesn't need that much gold. But Shrimp really just kind of has like a free Tiamat on his back right now that helps him with his clear, that helps him accelerate his jungle. And this guy always played a carry style. I think back to his Rek'Sai and Challenger and how he would really just take all the kills, flame horizon people in the jungle, take lane farm. And that's been Shrimp's style, is high income jungler. So
very, very different to what you're seeing from Svenskeren, playing a champion that, like you said, has one of the lowest econ requirements in the game to actually be effective. Ivern, essentially a functioning support in the jungle.
Look at this ward control from Dignitas in this topside jungle. They're just looking for, kind of making TSM scared of the Baron, because they have to check it.
I mean, when you have Cassiopeia on your team and 2 Blade of the Ruined Kings, you do Baron incredibly fast.
But the caveat here is you have control of the top side. You don't have Drake control And it's up in 30 seconds here, and they're going to push down this mid turret to try and make something happen here. Lod is in an awful position.
Yeah, Lod's really cut off by those traps. That's the flash over the Weaver's wall. Ace in the hole, blocked up by Shrimp. That was really close to sketchy for Dignitas, but doesn't quite end up getting quite there.
But that means Lod has to lifesteal off these Raptors, hope it's enough to contest and go after this this Drake.
Meanwhile, Shrimp's just beating them all up, taking the gold anyway.
Svenskeren got, Ssumday got the Scuttle Crab for himself.
Dignitas happy about securing some of that control over the area, but you've still got a half-dead AD carry. Some nice poke coming out there from Ssumday to try to even the odds a bit.
It's a half-dead AD carry with no flash either. If Hauntzer gets a flash ultimate on him, they can lock him up and really make something happen. But TSM, they're waiting.
It's going to go really bad or really good for somebody.
Shrimp's in there. He got it.
Got the steal. But now where will the fight go? Hauntzer ulti used, Shrimp locked down, jumping over the ball, flashing away. He'll live to see another day, and Dignitas runs in, makes the steal, and gets out alive.
Man, Shrimp, that leash actually got Shrimp the Drake because it healed up right out of the smite range of Svenskeren, and then it was right in Shrimp's right after that.
All chat, TY for leash, jump up the wall, flash out, see you later.
Oh, not promoting toxicity in any way.
No, absolutely not.
But
he's saying thank you.
Exactly. Being kind. Anyway, this game is just Mountain Drake, Infernal Drake back and forth now. And it's just become pretty hotly contested in that area. People are not trying to fight. They're trying to get these objectives without fighting. They're trying to wait for their power spikes, and both teams are kind of doing that. But also, TSM, like I said, aren't really good at engaging fights, whereas Dignitas kind of want to scale, and they have the better engage.
Yeah, TSM can be a great team to kite back if you engage on them. I mean, you've got yourself a Karma, you've got a Caitlyn, you've got Taliyah, all these tools to stop your opponents from going further if they go in. But in terms of going in themselves, like you said, Dig's the team with the engage this time around.
But Dig's like, we want to scale, so we're not really going to engage on you yet. We'll make some picks early. Oh, Bjergsen.
Nice. But the damage in return. Bjergsen grabs his second kill of the game, just destroys Bid.
Oh, disgusting. He's only got 41 magic resistance, and then Bjergsen currently rocking the 43 magic penetration. He does true damage to the Bard.
Bonus, more than true damage. Bard's got -2 MR.
Don't know if it goes down that far.
I don't actually know if that's how it works either. I can't remember if Pen functions that way, but right now, mid lane tier 1 turret's gonna fall. TSM taking that turret lead for themselves. 4-3 now is the count. They're the ones with the ever so slight gold lead as they walk up through the top side of the enemy jungle, towards Baron, I should say, seeing if they can establish some vision, take control over that area, and tell Dignitas, hey, now you've got to move into all this warded area. You've got to clear these out and make sure we're not on top of it.
They're trying to get that mid turret, trying to get that priority.
They've got it. For now, in terms of the zoning, in terms of the control, Bear doesn't have too many problems taking this away. They do get it. TSM not able to move in time. Daisy summoned up.
Trying to get them on the scatter here, because Dignitas were all kind of running around for the hills.
Big opens up a magical journey just in time to get himself away from Daisy. The rest of the team falls back. Daisy's not really going to accomplish a whole lot this time around, but TSM and Dignitas, 25 minutes in, Zirene. These two are so evenly matched, it is crazy. One Earth Drake each. Dignitas having that extra Infernal that we saw them take earlier. Again, still waiting on one of those moments that's really going to separate one team from the other. Even when the fight happened around the last Drake, it wasn't so much of a fight as a steal and bail. Neither side willing to commit to one of those risky fights. They know that if they fall behind just a little bit, it could be the game, and they don't want to have to deal with that uphill climb. Playing very, very safely, minimizing mistakes as opposed to taking the risks to make a big play. Both sides content with this for now, but we'll have to see who breaks first. It's kind of a game of League of Legends chicken. Who's going to swerve into making that play?
And it's making sure they have control of the Baron. And that's, like you're saying, it's chicken, but it's all about that setup. Making your opponents face check areas that they don't want to, making them have to set up vision and get caught, but really playing around the times that you want to be able to do the objective yourself.
TSM are the ones on top of the pit right now, though, clearing out those wards, throwing down the brush. Remember that Ivern can no longer hide epic monsters inside a single brush. That was a little bit goofy, so we took that out. Baron's only about 3 stories tall, so fitting inside a 4-foot brush doesn't really make that much sense. As Dignitas pushes up mid lane now, TSM has filed out of the area. And if you're Dignitas, you're feeling pretty good about the fact that you're doing what you've done so far in the game. Shrimp with the 100% kill participation, making the plays early. 2 of those kills they had onto DoubleLift at the start of the game. One a little bit later than the other, of course, but still they had that focus early on. They've stayed neck and neck with TSM, who, again, going into this split, we talked about they returned to the Summer 2016 roster that was so dominant. They've got DoubleLift back. This is the team that so many people were looking at saying, this is #1 material. This is the best team in the NA LCS, and Dignitas has gone blow for blow with them so far for 27 minutes. They've got to be feeling good about that, but at the same time, they need to find a way to turn that into more of a lead if they want to have a chance to actually take TSM.
Yeah, I don't think they're in too much of a rush, though. The game pretty even. Infernal Drake in a minute. Don't need to face check or anything like that. So I feel like Dignitas take it slow, wait for TSM to possibly make a mistake in their macro play, and that's pretty much what the two teams are doing, are back and forth, back and forth. And right now, TSM's wards are set up around Baron, and they're trying to deny vision so that when Dignitas go for the Infernal Drake, then they can take the Baron or possibly answer in some sort of fashion in that way, at least denying Dignitas' wards on the top side of the map.
A little bit of a scuffle bottom side between the two top laners who have TPs available, flashes as well.
I'm waiting for Big to like throw out a Tempered Fate just to get flashes or possibly engage, because then your second one is just that much more effective.
Ssumday has made his way over here just by walking. He doesn't even need to teleport as TSM start up the Baron. Hauntzer's going to be teleporting in. Nice Weaver's Wall to block away any sort of opportunity to get in there. Tempered Fate to buy some more time. Dignitas waiting for this to go down so they can get in there as the trap line is set up. Ssumday going to be stepping on trap #1. TSM trying to make the way through. There comes the root onto Bjergsen. The damage comes through, but the redemption and the shields will keep him alive. TSM fourth on
Inside
Baron.
crack mid for Dignitas. They could push this to tier 2. The Baron has been disengaged. The top lane tier 2 is what's going to be in the eyes of TSM, whereas this mid lane tier 2, as well as defending that top and going for the Infernal Drake, Dignitas right now are trying to go after 3 things at once. Defend top, get mid, get Infernal Drake. They have to make 2 of those calls, not all 3.
It's a risky gambit. Will it actually pay off for them? Ssumday, the only man around this tier 2 top side. No way he's defending that one. That'll go ahead and go down. Meanwhile, Keane makes quick work of that Drake. That's the second Infernal Drake going the way of Dignitas, so plenty of extra damage in their pockets now as TSM goes right back into the Baron pit.
And Ssumday kind of defends top, but the turret goes down. They don't get mid turret because Bjergsen defends it, but they get the mid wave pushed out, and that's kind of the one that I feel they should have sacked. They maybe should have defended that top with a little bit more power, because you're looking at a team that's not really going to go for a dive. There's a possibility that the Kennen flash ultis on you, but you're pretty safe from that.
Kennen flash ulti, almost level 16, so that's nearly at the highest possible threat that it will be. Blade of the Ruined King, Frozen Mallet, Runeant's Hurricane, on-hit Kennen really coming into that point where he's very effective against no matter how many targets are in front of him. He's still going to be dealing the damage, putting on the slows.
Gives you some teamfight power as well, and some split pushing, where if you get that one attack, then you're really just going to eat all these Kennen auto attacks as follow-up. So if Kennen can beat you in a one-on-one,
you can't ever let him hit you once.
Exactly.
Things have threat that much more serious, but at the same time, Ssumday is not exactly a slouch either. You can see him working on the Maw of Malmortius after completing the modern bruiser core of Blade of the Ruined King and Black Cleaver.
Yeah, his build is really built to deal with Kennen and lifesteal, but then he has Black Cleaver for Armor Shred, mostly for CDR. And I think the big thing here is the Maw for both the Taliyah and a bit of the Kennen, whereas you would expect this to be more focused on... Hold on one second.
All right, Dignitas will burn this down very, very rapidly. Remember what
Nobody's there, yeah.
Twin Fang and Double Bork. You're going to get that sucker fast.
And the Mountain Drake on top of that, too. That's going to give them so much damage. And now Dignitas in the driver's seat off of that macro play. They didn't clear out the wards completely, didn't show their location, put down the control ward, and then they had Big zoning, who could throw out the Tempered Fate on Svenskeren or anybody approaching when they saw them. So they got control at the top side, and they're rewarded with that Dig Baron. And that's not one of the meme ones. That's one of the
no, that's one of the good ones. That's not Dignitas Baron. That's Dignitas Baron.
Oh, wait, hold on, Shrimp.
Uh-oh. Oh, no. Shrimp. Face checking the brush. Rooted up. First it's down. Himself away. Ace in the Hole's not finishing off that much health.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Hauntzer taken down by Ssumday. Ssumday picks up a kill in a 2 versus 1.
Held the flash, too, and now they're going to push mid. Are they going to start racing here?
It's going to be a 4 versus 4.
To get your initial D music on, they're going for a race.
Yeah, deja vu, here we go. Lod pushing up the mid lane. He's going to be the one they leave there. As the rest of Dignitas goes back to defend. DoubleLift going to be in some trouble. There comes your Bard stun. Dignitas not looking to force a 3v4 though. They just want to hold the line here, buy Lod some time. Daisy's burned away, more damage coming in. Big barely walking out. Meanwhile, TSM's base. Knock, knock, baby, it's Lod trying to take down that inhib. TSM continuing to apply the pressure, not willing to cut their losses and retreat. They will lose their mid lane inhib.
Yeah, and the question is, does he keep pushing? Because TSM are going to keep pushing. He's going to back up. Lod has the ultimate.
TSM fall back now as well. They recognize Ssumday's going to be up in a couple of seconds. They don't want to overstay their welcome.
Exactly, and Hauntzer came back up on the top side, so he was able to actually just make sure that the minions wouldn't reach the Nexus, and Lod had to back because of that.
Another risky choice from Dignitas. They could have potentially had disaster if TSM's dive would have worked there in the 4 versus 3, but TSM couldn't find a way to do it.
Exactly. TSM didn't have Hauntzer for a flash ultimate, and then what's their engage? Svenskeren landing a Q, and then everybody going to their max auto or their minimum auto attack range, which is like,
yeah, you don't have a way.
Okay.
It can't work. There's not a way in there.
Yeah, they're looking for traps set up in Siege, but then you have wave clear, and you have Cassiopeia. And honestly, it almost got turned around.
And that's why it was a good call from Dignitas to go for that. Here's this play bottom from Ssumday.
Gets all the attacks into him. Not panicking just yet. Redemption a little bit late, and then he gets him. And you saw there, the Maw went off, the Hexdrinker went off, and ended up saving him.
That was exactly what Ssumday needed to do to make the following series of events transpire the way they did. If Hauntzer wasn't dead there, that was a very different story for what was happening for TSM and for Dignitas.
And that's why Shrimp was face checking, because he was actually trying to rotate bottom to help Ssumday, but TSM had all 5 members bottom.
All right, here comes the anti-siege from TSM. The traps and the brushes used
so much damage.
I don't think it's defensive enough. Chains of Corruption flies off, doesn't connect, but it scares them away. Dignitas makes this a 2-inhib game.
Yeah, TSM losing their base. And you could see Hauntzer trying to get something back, but oh.
Meanwhile, Big again experiencing the fun of that Taliyah damage when you have no MR.
Yeah, Bjergsen, 4 out of 5 kills, 100% kill participation. Bjergsen's on a carry, ladies and gentlemen. It's the thing that people wanted.
Yeah.
But still, it's this macro play coming together and playing as a team and playing the map. Shrimp, though, looking for Hauntzer.
Let's see if he can find him. The Sonic Wave won't hit the mark. Bjergsen was waiting around nearby anyway, so Shrimp's probably better off that it didn't hit.
Yeah. Right now, though, it was actually good that they killed off Big, because now the ward placement and the ward timing around that Elder Dragon is going to be a bit off. They're going to have to fight for that area in a few seconds here, and that's what Big was doing, is he was just trying to get control of the area. Gets himself in there, too, and Bjergsen actually predicted a Bard portal over the right wall. He actually used his seismic shove in the Dragon Pit, so he was trying to go for something a little cheeky there.
4-5 overall in this game, despite the inhibs, despite the pushes and the fights and the picks, Zirene. We're still never over 1,000 gold apart every time I check in on it. TSM and Dignitas just staying neck and neck throughout this entire race. At what point looked like an actual race, but now back to more of a standoff.
Yeah.
Elder Drake live in under 10 seconds. Item builds starting to become very intimidating as multiple big threats are coming online with multiple items being stacked up. The potential for an explosive team fight just gets bigger and bigger as the game goes on.
The items that I'm really looking at right now is just that top lane. The Elixir of Wrath for Ssumday and the Elixir of Sorcery. They're making sure that Elixir of Sorcery for Keane, making sure that they're ready to go in these fights. Because right now, Hauntzer's up a Phantom Dancer versus a QSS for Ssumday. Elder Drake started up. There's the Taliyah wall.
I like this call from TSM. It's brave. They're not willing to wait around. They're forcing the issue right now. Elder Drake under half.
Shrimp went in.
Still up. Over the wall. Going to be tanking for now. Drake still low. Redemption comes down.
1,000.
Going to be tanking. Ssumday low. And Shrimp gets the objective. TSM in retreat. Ssumday over the wall, 1-for-1 again as they chase him down, put him in the ground, and a double kill for Keane. Bjergsen's out of there. Bio is done. Shut down Dignitas with an ace.
They bring in Shrimp, and my boy steals every objective that he can. Starts the game off on the right foot, and now Dignitas going to end it.
They march, slither, and stomp down bottom lane right towards that enemy base with 2 inhibs already fallen, and Dignitas will go for broke with this one. TSM will fall in game number 1 as Dig starts this series off right.
And Ssumday sells his items, buys the tears, cries one out in happiness as Dig take the Nexus and game 1.
750 out of 750. Dignitas with some tears of joy. Exactly how they wanted to start this best of 3.
Exactly. They brought in their substitute in the jungle, Shrimp. We haven't seen this guy in a long time, but he looked on point. The early start caught the bottom lane off guard, stopped a lot of the momentum that you get from picking Caitlyn Karma, shoving the lane. He's dead once, he's dead twice early, and then the whole game in that pressure lane didn't take off for a long time, and it stalled out, which is exactly what Dig wanted as the steals came up.
As the steals came up, I don't even know if Ssumday had a blue trinket the whole time, but he made sure that his tier synergy was on point at the end too. Even getting the trinket, nope, he bought it specifically at the end of the game just to make sure he had that 6.5 tier.
Yeah, he also most damage in the game for himself as well, but it was a very low damage game overall. Yeah. We're looking at like 300 damage per minute for these guys. And it's ended up being something that, as these things go on, macro play is meaning so much, and a team like Dignitas that was talking about communication realized that. It's not about having like the best player that you can in your role. It's about having the best team that you can and integrating those players, and it seems like they've worked on that in the offseason, and it wasn't all just, hot air.
Yeah, we were getting to the point of the game. We were 25, 30 minutes in. The score was 3-1 for the longest time. These teams, like you said multiple times during the game, weren't concerned about the kills. They weren't concerned about the big fights. It was about scaling. It was about objectives and waiting for that right moment. It's exactly what they wanted to do based on their team comps.
Yeah, and the team compositions is kind of the big thing for me because these were tankless comps. So you kind of just siege up and wait for whatever strength you have, whether it's engage or shielding. And TSM really didn't have a way that if they ever got a lead to force the issue except for sitting at your turret, sieging up, and then hoping that you get frustrated to try and engage.
And what really was able to make it so Dignitas could go neck and neck with TSM like this is the new guy in the jungle, Shrimp, making those early plays, putting Dignitas where they needed to be.
Yeah, Chaser kind of like hung around top and like made some plays every now and then, but I think that Shrimp with this level 2 cheese on the bottom side is big because Chaser was kind of innovative of like level 2 strategies where he did quick level 3s to top side where he had like the full top side clear into that, whereas this here, just the synergy of the big Shrimp. That's that combo. I call it the oxymoron combo. It's already there.
Big Shrimp.
Super good. And then he went top lane and also upset that matchup too. So Shrimp had, really this is kind of Shrimp's big day out. He's 2-0-6, only missed out on 1 kill in the game for his team, and he didn't die.
That couldn't have been a better start for him to really show off again. Like you said, it's been a few months since we've seen the guy, and what a way to make a re-entry other than that. And on top of the plays he made early, let's not forget multiple objective steals, including the one that ends up winning the game, the final fight, Elder Drake 5 for 1, 36 minutes in.
Yeah, they buy time here, and then Shrimp goes in with the magical journey, so he still has his Q, he still has everything. Kick back onto Kennen, exactly what you want so he doesn't get stunned up, but then the damage comes through, but it's Dignitas doing the damage now because Keane on the right side, zoning TSM, and then Ssumday flashes in to go get Hauntzer at the end. That setup, the way that that fight was spread was perfect because Keane went into the negative zone where Scuttlecrab was, forced the defenseless, the tankless composition of TSM to move to the right. Kennen got kicked out, and then all of Dignitas were really just dealing damage to the Drake. That's not one where you go, TSM, stop hitting the Drake. That's Dignitas, no, please stop hitting the Drake. And they got the smite steal. They believed that Shrimp would be able to pick that one up.
Having that kind of faith in your jungler, very, very important. And you can see the goal difference over time, the graph there. The peaks and the valleys are so small for so long, and then at the end, it just skyrockets all the way up to what you saw as the game ended. But even that skyrocket, that's not the 10,000, 15,000 gold lead you often see when an Nexus explodes. That was 5,000 gold, and that was the biggest difference throughout the entire game. These two teams were very evenly matched.
Neck and neck. And Dignitas, they were 2-0 coming into this in terms of their matches beating FlyQuest and Envy, so there's still some questions of strength of schedule.
Right.
They just took down TSM in game 1, and they looked quite good doing it. But that was mostly Big, Shrimp, and then the pairing up with Keane and Ssumday. You even saw there, Lod did 3,000 damage. He did the least damage in the entire game. That was really kind of him sitting back, being along for the ride, and waiting for those ultimates.
And sometimes that's what you have to do. You're not always going to be the superstar at center stage, but if you can play into a team where you're not that, as long as you can take that back seat when you need to, That's part of that communication we were talking about. That's part of that process.
Exactly. If you're able to just say, this isn't my game, I'm just kind of a CC bot this time. It's like when people have to play Ivern, right? It's like,
yeah. It's like, I'm not going to be the carry.
Exactly. I'm not the carry. I'm the best supporting actor, and that's what I can hope for. And that's really what Lod kind of went for there, whereas the rest of his team is just coming up big across the board. I do have to say, though, that stealing an Elder Dragon is not a play that you should be trying to bank on, but they would have won that fight most likely anyway because they had more Drakes. There were less for true damage that really mattered in that fight, and their positioning in the fight before the Drake was even taken was still superior for Dignitas. So the setup is something you have to look at as well because it was definitely better than TSM's.
Like, I had respect for TSM pulling the trigger on the Drake so quickly, but it was very different from what we saw in the rest of the game. The rest of the game, it was so patient. It was so measured. There was so much time spent around everything. And then Elder Drake spawns, and TSM says, go.
Yeah.
And while I can respect it, it was surprising.
Exactly. And I feel like what they said was, this is something that Dignitas just did to us. They took the Baron right from under their noses, and they felt like that's how you win this game is a quick objective take, no hesitation, because it happened to them. But I don't think that's really how that should have played out, because Dignitas, even before that Drake, in a great position, because they had bottom inhib, mid inhib down, and they were ready to push because of the fact that they took that Baron, and they had such a good opportunity to do so. So there's some gaps in what TSM was playing.
Well, before we get into Game 2 of Team Dignitas versus TSM, we've got to jump into a quick break, kind of the way we do things here. As we send it off, take a look at this week's This or That, where I was lucky enough to join Kobe to chat about Week 1 of NA LCS.